Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Celtics Digest. And we're here with another live stream for you guys with special guest Adam Taylor. If you guys don't know who Adam is, he previously wrote for Celtics blog, host of the Vitamin C's podcast alongside Tim Sheilas, and is the creator of Celtics Chronicle, which just hit 1,000 followers and subscribers on his newsletter. So, Adam, thank you for hopping on today. How you doing today, my guy?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Of course, I'm out. I just want to give you a shout out to Adam. Adam was one of the people that, was one of the first people to recognize me, give me some credit, some shout out over on Twitter, and I wanted to repay them favor, give them some nice show over here on Celtics Digest. So drop down your thoughts, drop down your feelings. If you guys have any questions around this Celtics team, fire them off in the comments down below, and Adam and I will definitely get to those in this live stream. But today, we're going to be breaking down and talking about this Celtics squad. There's not really a lot to talk about this offseason, Adam, huh? It's kind of tough.
Yeah, it's rough, dude, man. Everything's the same. They win the championship. There's no drama. There's no news. There's no additions. Like it's tough. I'm trying to write a newsletter every day, and there's only so many ways you can say the same thing.
Uh-huh. I feel like that's the same thing with the video format as well. Like, you know what I mean? There's only so much to talk about. You got to just kind of grasp at straws to kind of get some nice things going. But there's some interesting things around this Celtics team and some nice topics that we can kind of dive in and talk about here as well. So, Adam, kind of first off, one of the news and pieces that we've kind of talked about on our channel over here is the ownership with the Boston Celtics. As we know, Wick Grusbeck is looking to, sell his majority stake in that. And there have been some possible, rumors of some bidders. We saw Bill Simmons come out say that Jeff Bezos had some legitimate buzz, but that got shot down. There was some reports of the Fenway Group being interested, with John Henry and now John Henry shutting it down. What are your kind of thoughts and analysis over this ownership group, and what are your kind of thoughts on it, basically?
I mean, Bezos is the ideal guy, right? Whoever comes in and buys this team needs to be able to eat a huge tax penalty, a potential repeated tax penalty. They need to be able to stomach how much this roster is going to cost to keep together. That's going to be a huge part. And then hopefully be able to either build a new arena or purchase the TD Garden once the lease ends, because that's just a money drain on the Celtics that they should be able to avoid long term. Him not wanting to be involved, I don't know whether I fully buy that. Like, sports ownership's a billionaire's playground, and he's the second richest man on the planet. Sooner or later, he's going to want to get in on the playground, whether that's in the NBA, the NFL, maybe even in like European soccer. He's going to buy a team somewhere at some point. I feel really confident in that. For the Celtics, though, not having the opportunity to have Bezos as the guy that owns the team is tough, because, again, you don't want the next ownership group to come in and just start tearing down what Brad's built, taking away a potential dynasty because they want to save money. Obviously, it's going to be an expensive purchase from jump, and then they're going to inherit this massive tax bill. It's part of why I don't want the Fenway group involved at all. Now, it's really funny because anyone I speak to stateside, especially in Boston and the New England area, absolutely hate the Fenway group.
Yep.
As someone over in the UK, the only experience I have with the Fenway group, and I'm not a soccer person at all, so I still might be wrong here, but they purchased Liverpool's football club, and that team just went from strength to strength to strength underneath the Fenway group. They became a bit of a powerhouse for a while. So it's weird how my view of them versus your view of them being over on stateside and you having far more experience with their ownership style. It's weird how that differs, but from everything I've heard, they would be the sort of owners that would come in and just destroy everything. So that's definitely not what I want. Bezos would have been perfect.
That's the thing that I think a lot of people kind of recognize with the Fenway Group is, like you said, with the football clubs, they've been able to invest, but they have so much money in other teams. They also have some money in the Penguins as well. They also have money with the Fenway Sports Group within the Red Sox. So it would be a lot of money being allocated for a lot of teams, and especially with this Celtics roster being so expensive, like you mentioned, it would definitely be difficult for them to be able to, pay that bill. Bezos, like you said, I think would have been a guy that would have been perfect. The only kind of question mark that rose with me was why wouldn't he wait for expansion to kind of go to Seattle with Amazon and stuff like that? That was like my only like, why wouldn't he want to go over there, build his stadium over there, have something grow over there, like in his home city? But I mean, he would be a guy that could pay that $6 billion that Bill Simmons was alluding to, which would be the Celtics sale point, and then would be a guy that would be able to stomach that $900 million guaranteed that's already given to all these guys with the Celtics roster.
The other guy in my head is, and I don't know his name, forgive me, is the dude that owns Spotify. Like
Okay.
he's shown interest in buying a sports team before. He's shown interest in some soccer teams. Again, he's incredibly wealthy, has a very stable set of income coming in from all the Spotify revenue. Seems to have his head screwed on in ways of like, hey, if you want to be profitable in terms of sports, then you need to invest and you need to be willing to just let the value grow as you win tournaments in terms of the NBA Cup, you win the championships, you keep growing the brand, and then when it's time to sell, you're going to make that profit. He's another guy I think would be like that new school money is kind of like what I like to call it. He's new school money, so he's going to be a lot more forward thinking, might be very analytical, could be a good addition to the Celtics ownership group. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. I'm sure there's going to be some people, some very wealthy people that we've never heard of, just turn up one day and be like, yo, here's $6 billion. Now give me the team. And that's probably the most logical way it's going to go, right? It's just going to be someone we never heard of or we just didn't expect.
And that's, I feel like, what is kind of the tale with the Boston Celtics as well, as all the moves that happen with this team you never really hear of, even from the roster to even in the front office. I mean, that Brad Stevens move going from transitioning, it wasn't really spoken about. You know what I mean? That was kind of just out of the blue. These trades for Kristaps Porziņģis with Marcus Smart for trading for Jrue Holiday, they were just out of the blue, out of nowhere. So I could definitely see a way in which that happens as well. The Celtics definitely like to move, behind the scenes, I will say. They don't like to put out what they're doing, at least, in the face front. Another person that I think like that you can mention as well is obviously the people that already have stake in the ownership group as well. I know that Wyc Grousbeck is the majority owner, but there's some other guys like Steve Paglucca and all of them that have a minority stake. And I think those guys would be also interesting as well because they already know the landscape of this team. They kind of know what Wyc Grousbeck and what this ownership group wants already, and I think that they'd be willing to put forward the money as well to maintain that and be a person that is willing to make that change, similar how to Wyc did with Brad this offseason.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Pags has spoke about he wants to be part of that bidding process. He's done really good job in with Atlanta over in Italy as a soccer team. He seems to have his head screwed on. He already knows how the team operates. He already has a relationship with Brad Stevens in the front office. And that's a concern too, right? Like whatever ownership group comes in may decide they want their own president of basketball operations, and they could potentially want somebody to replace Brad Stevens, which would be the biggest mistake in the history of ever. Like Brad Stevens has proven himself that he was an excellent coach. He's even better as a president of basketball operations. So Pags would keep that continuity there. How much money he has in terms of being able to stomach potentially 6 or 7 years of repeater tax bills, that I'm not too sure about, right? You've got to come up with 6 billion to buy the team, but now you also have to figure a way of paying that repeater tax. Now it doesn't mean Boston are always going to be a second apron team. The second apron is going to will keep moving up as the cap moves up, and because of the way the Celtics contracts are situated now, there's a chance that they might slide under in a few years. But at least for the next two, there's going to be some really heavy bills, and I'm just don't know what Pags' finances. I'm not meant to. I'm not pocket watching. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. And that's the thing too. You mentioned that this team is going to get expensive and whoever does have to take over this ownership is going to want to keep this team together, at least for us fans. You know what I mean? They can't kind of come in, buy the team and kind of shake everything up from us or else we'll become an outroar and become,
Yeah.
revolting against the ownership. And that's not something that we want to have happen either. You know what I mean? Having new owners come in because we've seen that with other teams and it just go downhill a way that isn't great. But I think with, Tatum and Brown being locked up, we obviously saw all these guys get extensions these last 2 seasons. Porzingis is coming in, Holiday and White this offseason. I truly think that these guys are going to be ready to go, and hopefully the ownership is putting their money where their mouth is. If they're ready to pay the money, they'll be ready to speak about it and give it out as well. But I think there's some great choices, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to leave it with this. The worst thing a new ownership group could do is come in and tear things down because
Yep.
that's not going to leave you in good standing with the fan base. And if the fan base aren't messing with you, then all of a sudden you might have some attendance issues. There might be some merchandise sale issues because people will just start to hit you where it hurts, which is in the pocket. If you want to be cheap, then we can be cheap too, right? Whether that's me flying over to watch games, whether it's me ordering merchandise across seas, whether it's you guys over stateside already being like, well, I'm not going to bother turning up for this game because Instagram, we've organized a 10,000 person boycott and we're going to leave half the state because those things can happen. And you see them happen, not so much American sports, but especially over Europe when there's an issue with an ownership group, they get made to know. So the worst thing they could do is come in and just ruin what Brad Stevens has built and the trajectory this team's on at the moment.
Yep, and that would be absolutely abysmal. And then who knows even how that makes Brad Stevens feel? Maybe Brad Stevens goes a different direction, and that's just something that we don't want to see because that, like you said, that would be the worst thing ever, is if Brad Stevens were to, somehow lose the roster that he was constructed, or we were to lose Brad Stevens because him moving into that general manager spot, I think was a blessing in disguise for all Celtics fans.
Yeah, and it would be twofold, right? You wouldn't lose one without the other, so then all of a
Yep.
sudden you're completely screwed.
Exactly, exactly. But Adam, let's talk about some more things revolving around the Celtics team. We just dove in and talked about, the ownership group and kind of some stuff around that. But another kind of part that I wanted to talk about this team was an ex-Celtic that recently just signed, and we saw him, blossom overseas over in France at the Olympics, and that is Guerschon Yabusele. Guerschon Yabusele, as we all know, used to play with the Boston Celtics, drafted 16th overall in 2016, has now signed with the Philadelphia 76ers on a 1-year deal after getting bought out from Real Madrid. Now, Adam, what are your kind of thoughts on Guerschon getting this contract? Because I know he was calling out to Gary Washburn, telling him, bring me back to Boston. Even though he didn't get back to Boston, he's coming back to playing in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, bring me back to Boston is give me a championship. Or like you can go to Philly and kind of contend, but you go to Boston, you're contending, right?
Yeah.
I think Yabu's at this. If you look at what he's been doing in Europe since he left Boston, like he played for a couple of middling teams in Europe and then found himself over at Real Madrid, which is very similar to their soccer team, one of the biggest basketball teams in Europe. Played very well at the start of his career there and then slowly became like an integral piece, a core piece of what they're doing. He shone in the Euro League this year, shone in the Liga ACB, which are both obviously European leagues. Real Madrid playing both because one's like a cup competition, one's a league
Hmm.
competition. Shot over 40% from deep, I think, in both of those leagues last season. Minimal usage. I think it was 2 or 3 attempts per game on each, but it's just a pick and pop threat. He's a big body. He can guard up, can slide down to guard the three, slide up to 4 or 5. Positionally quite sound, good screener, good rebounder. And he shone in the Olympics. He just put himself in the shop window and was like, "Yo, look at me. I might not have been NBA ready when I left, but I'm NBA ready now." I'm not expecting huge things from him. Like he's going onto a Sixers team that needed depth at the forward spot. But at the same time, still be playing behind some really high level forwards. Maybe like is 8 minutes a game fair? Is that too high? Is a consistent role too much to ask? There's a lot of questions, but I think he's definitely earned a shot.
I agree as well. You mentioned some great points. Obviously, him dominating out in that Olympic run with Team France here, going for silver, and really showing out in those elimination games versus Team Canada, where he was needed to come out. He dropped 22 points. Versus Germany, the 3-0 team, he also had 17. And then versus Team USA in that gold medal game, he obviously had that crazy dunk on LeBron James and got notched 20 points as well. But solid rebounder, like you mentioned. He can stretch out to hit that 3-point shot. And we saw that in the Olympics and over with Real Madrid. And I think, like you mentioned, he can be a solid, bench power forward for this Sixers squad as well. We know the 76ers at least don't really have like a true power forward on their roster. They have guys like KJ Martin who can kind of play that position. They have Adam Bona, Andre Drummond, Joel Embiid at the center spot, Caleb Martin kind of playing that 3-4, but they don't really have that, true power forward that can really, play alongside Joel Embiid. And we saw alongside Victor Wembanyama, Guerschon Yabusele look solid in the Olympics. So
Yeah.
I think him playing alongside another dominant big will, only heighten his game, make him look solid. I'm expecting some good things out of Guerschon Yabusele over in Philly. And that is a little sad because, Philly is one of our rivals. Even though Joel Embiid says we always kick their ass, they are one of our rivals. So it's going to be a tough season going up against Yabu. And the Philly fans are going to let, the Celtics fans know about Yabu if he does good.
But yeah, they're gonna be loud. They're always loud. It is what it is. I think for me, and I've been very vocal about this across social media, I'm not sold on Philly as a contender in terms of they have the talent, but you've hitched your wagon to two very injury prone dudes, right? Like Paul George was mentally healthy for a contract year, go figure. But before that, it was like, hey, I can play 50 games this season, and then I'm going to be rehabbing during the postseason, trying to be ready for when we get deep into that run. Oh, but because I'm not fully healthy to start the postseason, guess what? We're not going to go on a deep run because you rely on me to. So, and then you've got the exact same thing with Embiid. Just struggles to stay healthy, generally trying to work himself back to fitness in the playoffs. Expecting both of those guys to be healthy for the entire season together at the exact same time, that's a dice roll, man. So they can tell us about Yabu all they want, but unless their two stars stay completely healthy for an entire year, like it's not going to make much difference. And then
I
Yabu can still has to come to Boston.
I agree, Adam. I'm in that boat with you as well, where I think that when we discuss these contenders in the Eastern Conference, some of them have holes. And the Sixers' hole to me is will they be, and it's not really a hole, but will they be able to stay healthy the entire season? You brought up great points with Joel Embiid. Last year we saw the Sixers being a dominant team, top two in the East. Then right when he gets hurt, falling down all the way to the play-in. Now, obviously, there's no Paul George to kind of no third star to kind of help out over there. Maxi's obviously growing and going to get better. He's still going to be a solid player. But if Paul George is out for 10 of those games that Joel Embiid's out, then it's just Tyrese Maxey. And yeah, they got some guys to fill in like Drummond and Bona to help out at that center position. They got some more playmakers. They got Reggie Jackson. They got Jared McCain as a solid shooter. But if they cannot have all three of their stars out there for the playoffs or even at the playoffs at that point, it's going to be difficult because if they're running into a team, even like Indiana, or running into a team like Orlando in the first round, who have those young stars ready to go and have that young, deep bench with a squad that has either Embiid out or Paul George out having a big hole with a question to answer, then they definitely are not an issue or a problem.
Yeah, it's hard, man, because when they're healthy, they're going to be a problem. That two-man game between Joel and Paul George is going to be ridiculous. Maxi's just, I love watching Maxi in the open court. I think if you can spring him free with some grenade actions or some slice or wedge, sorry, no, some grenade actions, slice actions, or even some rip and drag screens, he's going to be an absolute menace in being able to just drive and kick the ball out, pressure the rim, force collapses. And now you not only have Embiid there, but you also have Paul George. So if you do collapse, you're screwed. And if you don't collapse, he's just going to score on you anyway. So when they're healthy, they're going to be a problem. And it's going to take a whole team effort for the Celtics, that are arguably the most complete defensive unit in the league, just to be able to contain them. I just don't feel like they're going to be healthy when it matters because they've not given us any reason to believe that they can be.
Exactly, and that's the difficult part is trying to stay healthy for all 82 games and making it to that point. And with Paul George, he's leaving one injury-riddled star in Kawhi Leonard and going to another injury-riddled star in Joel Embiid. So it's another like little question mark that's kind of risen as well in my mind, just because I don't necessarily know if they'll be able to get to that full potential that we can see for the Sixers squad, or for some Sixers fans that they truly believe in that this team will reach this season. Because I think a lot of them think that they're going to rival the Celtics or be at the Celtics' throat this entire season. Because that's what I've heard. But in all reality, if they can't stay healthy, they won't be able to match up with our bench unit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I take the Knicks far more seriously than what I take the Sixers. And I also think that people are sleeping on the Bucks compared to the Sixers as well, just because Giannis is generally pretty healthy. Dame is generally pretty healthy. You can rely on those two a bit more. Obviously, they've got their own issues in depth wise, and they've got aging guys behind them. Brook Lopez is not looking the same as he used to. Chris Middleton seems to have lost that first step a little bit.
Yep.
There's concerns elsewhere, like you said a minute ago. There's a lot of the contending teams have holes that you can kind of at least poke at a little bit and see what comes out. The Knicks to me are the closest to being a complete threat just because of the depth they have, the high level talent, the defensive mentality that they come with. But overall, man, the Celtics should still be first seed. They should still be coming out of the East. If the Sixers are healthy, maybe it's a problem, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah, I agree. I think regardless with Porzingis being out for how long he's going to be out, we saw the Celtics team be able to win with Porzingis in the regular season and playoffs with or without him. So I don't see that being an issue for the Celtics going into the season for the first couple months. Yeah, it might be a little bit more difficult but they have these guys like Kata, Cornette, Tillman, who have bought back into being into that stay ready role and are ready to take that stay ready role, fighting through training camp and playing with this team, fighting for that spot because they know Porzingis is going to be out for a couple months. They know Horford's going to be sitting out on the back to back. So guys like that are expected to have a big role, make a bigger run, and I truly think they're going to step into that and really arise to that to kind of match some of these other teams' depth. Where maybe some fans were critiquing the Celtics' depth last year. I don't think we'll be hearing that this season going around.
Yeah, I mean, they answered every question that got asked of them. The depth in terms of even O'Shea Brissett, dude. Like, I was pretty down on O'Shea Brissett when the Celtics added him last summer because I'm like, yo, you're playing in a 5-out offense on a high volume 3-point shooting team that values positional versatility and versatile skill sets, and you're adding a guy that's a non-shooter and non-creator, and now you're expecting it to work. And he did, it worked, right? But that was kind of the whole point of the Celtic season, was like, whatever role we put someone into, we're going to make sure that they thrive in that role by only asking them to do a certain set of things based on what their skill set was. And Brissett shone, man, he was a little bit of a momentum shifter during the postseason, especially when they were asking him to operate kind of like as an inverted screen guy, and they were asking him to do some fun stuff. So yeah, I think that every question that got asked of that roster last season got answered resoundingly. And if you're questioning it this year when it's the same team run back apart from O'Shea, then you're just looking to be miserable. And I'm not about that.
Yeah, no, man, I completely agree. All those haters, all those naysayers on Twitter need to be quiet because it's getting ridiculous now with all the hate that we've been seeing through all the whole summer. But yeah, you brought up a valid point as well, like talking about the roles and these guys kind of finding that. I've seen with past Celtics teams, it didn't really seem like we had those kind of defined roles for some of these role players or guys kind of bought into this role. Like, I'm going to be that low block defender and I'm going to get 3 blocks a game, or I'm going to be that guy that is going to fight for those loose balls and dive on the ground. We saw it in bits and pieces, but we didn't see those roles ingratiated. And you brought up a valid point with Brissett there, where he was a guy that was willing to throw his body on the line for any loose ball, was fighting for those offensive rebounds. He was a bit of an energy spark when he would come in off the bench and just kind of get that team going. And we even saw with Tillman as well, hitting that three, like getting the bench hyped up in the finals. These kind of sparks, these kinds of bench players really bring out the stars and really, congratulate the team together. And I think that that was something that may have been lacking in the last couple of years leading up to the Eastern Conference Finals, as we had some guys that were solid bench players who, could play a role, could be shooters, but they weren't defined at that role. You know what I mean? Peyton Pritchard was a solid scorer off the bench, but he wasn't hitting half court shots left and right. Sam Hauser was a solid shooter, but wasn't, getting blocks at the rim and playing solid defense, making sure to cover and help out on guys getting beat by screens. Those are the little intangibles and little tidbits that you see when these guys grow and truly bolsters them to be better. And like you mentioned, them bringing them all back besides O'Shea Brissett, replacing Svi Mykhailiuk with Baylor Shireman as well, I think that they're going to be ready to go. And like Jaylen Brown said yesterday, ready to answer the bell to basically everybody who's coming down and chasing after them.
Yeah, his exact words were, "Come on, like, yo, come on, I'm down." You mentioned Shyman, like he's the guy I'm probably highest on coming into this season out of the younger guys. When you look at Joe Mazzulla's system, and I'm just kind of what I'm taking every opportunity I can to get on Shyman Island early. Um, he's the type of guy that fits Mazzulla's system. He's positionally versatile, can play multiple roles, can handle the ball, can screen, can shoot, can defend a little bit. Obviously, there's some questions about whether he can hang with NBA level guards just because his lack of foot speed. But I do think that he'll learn to play angles a little bit, kind of similar to how Al Horford defends, where you cut off lanes rather than just try and keep up with dudes. I think he's more polished than what people are giving him credit for. He's a 5-year college guy, so he's coming in with a low ceiling but a high floor. I think that he will automatically jump over Jordan Walsh in that rotation because he gives you more on both sides of the floor just because of that versatility, the positional versatility. And I'm excited for that. And I think that when, as you said, replacing Svi, who was a single skill guy, he was just a shooter, right? With another multi skilled ball handler, point forward type of dude that can slide up, slide down, can create, can screen. He's going to be such a big aspect in for that bench unit, not in terms of like the primary rotation, but that step below where it's like, hey, Pritchard's injured or Pritchard's out for a day because he needs rest because we've been running him ragged. Let's throw Shyman in there. Or hey, we need some extra shooting. Some people are having bad nights. We can throw Shyman in there, but he can also create off the bounce. He can create off the dribble. Can create via a screen. He could just do so much. Like I'm on Shyman Island early this year because I've got a feeling I'm gonna be my stock's just gonna go up. It's all profit for me, baby.
I'm all in on the Shireman Island with you. I went to Seton Hall, so I saw him play at Creighton, and my boy
Okay.
can shoot that ball. Playing with Cockburner, all that type of stuff. The Creighton used to be a scary team when we used to play it when at Seton Hall, but Shireman, like you mentioned, I think can be that better Svi. I call him. When we talked on Twitter, I call him a little bit of a tweener guy, and I was very high on Svi last season. I thought Svi could kind of play that bench, maybe shooting guard, maybe bench small forward role. But it seemed like you said, his only asset was that catch and shoot. When he got in, every time he touched the ball, automatic catch, automatic he's going to shoot that basket, and it did work. But I do think that the Celtics did need that shooting sometimes when maybe Pritchard or Hauser isn't having the best game offensively. They would have liked to use Svi Mykhailiuk, but because of Sam Hauser's, length and verticality and being a bigger body to be able to play the wing and guard those wings, he got, a little bit more run at that position. Now, a guy like Sharman is 6'8". He has that body size. He can, kind of play that two guard position, but also has the playmaking, the handles, can facilitate an offense a little bit on the likes of Peyton Pritchard and be a playmaker, but also has that shooting ability of a combination of, both of those guys with Hauser and Pritchard, with having that, size ability as well to guard, to push for those rebounds. And we saw that in the Summer League highlighted versus the Lakers, where he dove for that loose ball into the stands, 3, 4 rows into the crowd trying to save a loose ball. And that's coming out from a guy that's working for a spot, fighting for a rotational spot, trying to showcase and highlight that he is worth it, that he is worth one of those picks. And that's what I love to see, is that Celtics integrity, throwing your body on the line, fighting for those balls, and really giving it your all, because that's what fans like me want to see.
Yeah, I mean, it just gears everybody up. It gears the fans up. It gears the guys on the floor up. It's leading kind of by example at that point, and that's what made O'Shea so valuable last year. Was he'd come in and make those hustle plays, make those momentum shifting moment like moves and moments. And the only difference between Brissett and Shyman is Shyman can play as an oversized guard. He can be an oversized one. He can be an oversized two. He can slot in at the three. He can be a bit of an undersized four or okay sized four, and he can give you those hustle plays along with being able to score, create, and whatever else. So I think that just in terms of coming into the season and who you want to be excited about from who he's just an unknown that could end up popping off and being Boston's version of what Podziemski was for the Warriors last year, right? But
Hmm.
obviously Pods was drafted a bit higher, so you expected a bit more. But it's the same thing. If you look at some of the coaches that kind of tweet out now and again on Twitter, everybody said that Shyman was the steal of the draft. Everybody said he shouldn't have fell how far he fell. Obviously, a lot of teams don't value multi-year tenured collegiate guys because the upside is always more attractive than somebody that can contribute straight away. Stevens clearly factored into the fact that the Celtics don't have time to develop anybody, so you bring somebody in that's ready to play now. So I'm excited about him, and I think that was the biggest change for me this summer. But I've spoke about it too much already this year, so I'm like, damn. By the time season comes, I'm going to have built him up that much. If he doesn't kill it, I'm going to be really upset, man.
Well, I mean, that's one of the good parts, is just that since there is no news, you just got to hype up the guys and kind of ride with them. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? And Shireman's been one of those guys who's gained a lot of attention from a lot of people. And I want to talk about one point that you hit on, which is drafting for the now, because I think that that needs to happen, because there were plenty of times through the last couple of years with draft selections where personally I was like, let's trade, let's get out of the lottery, let's not take a Romeo Langford, let's not take an Aaron Neesmith. Let's try to get an actual piece that will help out. Let's get some pieces around Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And we never really saw that over the last couple of years. And even though, those picks did land into pieces like Malcolm Brogdon, which landed into Porzingis and landed into, a guy in Derrick White as well. Like those draft picks were still valuable and still used. they could have been used at that point to gain even better stars or better players to maybe even help bolster this squad already to maybe even give the Celtics another opportunity of winning a championship. So I like them going with Shyman, liking them going with the older guy, the guy that can kind of fit right into the roster if need be. Like you mentioned, if there's an injury, if they're running guys, a little too much, maybe Hauser's not having the greatest offensive game. They want to throw Shyman out there, see what he can kind of gain, or maybe it's versus a Wizards or a Hornets, and they want to just have him go off for 25 or 30. Let him showcase, let him develop. And I definitely think by the end of the season, once we get into those, March, April games, that's when guys like Shireman, Springer, even Walsh are going to get those experiences and be able to kind of showcase to us Celtics fans what we want to see out of them.
Yeah, Springer's an interesting one though, right? Like he's in the last year of his current contract, isn't expected to be a big part of the rotation, but if you want to keep him around, then you're going to need to give him minutes that makes him be e- open to negotiating a new contract. Is probably the best way to put it. And he looked great. I mean, he played one game in summer league before the Celtics were like, "All right, you're done. You can sit the rest of this out. Like you're already above everybody else. It's unfair. Just go sit down. We don't want you to get hurt." Arguably one of the best point of attack defenders on the Celtics roster already. I think Jaylen Brown owns that title right now. Maybe Jrue Holiday. You can put them interchangeably. I think Jaylen Brown's the better point of attack defender for forwards. Now, do you know what? I'm lying. Jrue Holiday is the best point of attack defender. Then Jaylen Brown, but then Springer's probably right below Brown then at that point, or no, Derrick White. So he'd be fourth. I'm talking through this on the fly. So, but he's still a top 5 point of attack defender on the Celtics roster. He's shown he can hit the free. He can create off the dribble a little bit. He's young. He's going to get better. He came recommended from Sam Cassell. Like he kind of pushed for the Celtics to trade for him. He's in that last year of that deal now. So he's either going to get played and get paid, or he's not going to get paid and he's going to bounce in free agency and sign with a team that can give him minutes. It's going to be interesting to see how Mazzulla kind of balances that because you're still trying to win. And as I said a minute ago, you don't really have time to develop talent when you're like you're a champion and you're trying to go back to back. That development is an afterthought. But if you want to keep him around and you feel like he could be an important piece moving forward, you've got to find a way to play him.
I agree. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of great things to hit on Springer here. Just the fact that he is so great on the defensive side. And I remember one game from the Chicago Bulls this year where they were going on a little bit of a run towards halftime and they put in Springer there. And Springer came in, clamped up DeMar DeRozan in that last minute. It was just giving it his all. And that's just things that you love to see. You brought up how the fact of at the summer league, he basically stood out in front of all of those players, and I totally agree. That's why he only got that one game, honestly. But I want to see how what his role can kind of be with this squad. You mentioned that it's hard to develop these guys, especially while winning a championship, and I totally agree, and that's something that we don't really want to do. But there's already a lot of guards in this rotation already, and especially ones that are very good defensively on that side. Like we already have a guy in Jrue Holiday and Derrick White who are the best defensive backup duo guard duo in the entire league. You also have Peyton Pritchard, who's a great offensive creator. Is there a role for Springer to kind of play that maybe backup too with this team, or is it more just a rotation where he's going to be kind of getting some of those Peyton Pritchard minutes type if they're having a bad game, or if the type of matchup if a guy is going off against Peyton Pritchard with being that backup point guard, they'll throw Springer in there to kind of just put him on an island and lock him up for 5 to 10 minutes.
I mean, to begin the season, I'm always a big fan of experimenting with your rotations, your combinations, which players work well together. Let's gather data. So I can see a world where you let him play early and you just run a 10-man rotation for a few weeks because you just want to get that information. The downside is Pritchard's firmly ahead of him in the rotation, and he deserves to be firmly ahead of him in the rotation. Excuse me. He's an NBA champion at this point. So Springer's the one that's got to win, got to go to battle. Springer's the one that's got to prove he deserves those minutes. He's probably going to have a small role, but that doesn't mean it'll stay small all the way through the season. So for me, it's start early, experiment, play with a bigger rotation. If Springer pops, give him more minutes. If he doesn't, then he's got to earn it when his practices and when he gets spot minutes at the end of games.
Hmm. I want to see how he looks in training camp. I'm sure we'll see some clips or hear some reports of some of how these players are doing. So that's a guy that I really want to see kind of stand out, kind of blossom with that team and kind of be one of those guys. You mentioned he was pushed from Sam Cassell to be brought over because he was obviously with that 76ers core. He knew who he was, and his draft comparison was that Marcus Smart-esque type
Yeah.
player. So he is a guy that, the Celtics organization does like. He's the type of role that they would like to have with this team. The only issue I really see is just we already have two good defensive guards who are very good on the offensive side of the ball. Both can consistently hit the three-pointer, both can play make, both do that. And we haven't seen that type of leap with Springer obviously transitioning into that, offensive player. We've seen him be a very good defensive player besides the summer league game. We haven't really seen him take that leap offensively in the NBA. So I definitely think that he definitely needs to get some of those moments and minutes in the start of the season, like you were saying, to kind of evaluate and kind of generate that. Now, next, I want to talk to you about Walsh and your expectations on him because personally, for me, I would think that he would be a guy with Al Horford taking rest on back-to-backs and with Kristaps Porziņģis being out. He'd be another name kind of thrown into that gauntlet with, Tillman, Cornette, Kada kind of competing for those backup power forward center minutes.
Yeah, I'm not very high on Walsh coming into this season. I still think his potential's off the charts. Great length, ridiculous wingspan, high level defender. His shooting struggles at Summer League were, for me, more realistic than his Summer League last year, where he kind of popped off shooting from deep. I think Anton Watson might already be ahead of him there. I know that Watson's a two-way guy. I know that Walsh is on a full-scale contract. I think Walsh is a year away from being a year away, maybe, or a year away from being at least rotation ready. I think Watson, similar to Shyman's 5-year guy, comes in already kind of at a level where it's that low ceiling, high floor, ready to contribute off the jump. Do they give Watson minutes over Walsh when they want to develop Walsh? Well, again, you're a contending team, so the argument is you don't really worry about developing guys at this point in your timeline because you've already done years of that to get you here. You go with the guys that can make the impact. So I think if you do need a forward at the four and you're looking for somebody that can make an impact, I think Watson probably gives you more than what Walsh does because Watson plays both sides. Walsh is, I call them single skill specialists. You've got one thing you do really well, and then you're still developing everywhere else. And that's just, I don't see the value there for him at the moment, just because I don't even see the hustle plays being a good idea for him because he's still built, growing into his body, still a bit wiry. You don't want him to get hurt. Watson just makes more sense for me over Walsh coming into the season.
Yeah, Watson is a guy that is very high on. I mean, to be honest, I didn't really know much about him from Gonzaga before he got drafted over to the Celtics team, but he's a guy that has, made waves with this summer league squad as he blossomed, looked really, really solid on both sides of the floor, like you mentioned. He could stretch out, he was hitting those threes, but he was a very sound defender. Looked like he knew where to be in every position and just was very smart on the basketball court, which these players that have gone to school for 4 to 5 years, they get those natural instincts from playing college basketball for all those years, kind of translating it, and they kind of can bring it to the NBA game maybe a little bit easier than some of these rookies or guys that are doing one and dones. And that's something that we love to see is the intangibles and stuff like that being already programmed into a guy like Watson. I saw Bobby Manning tweeting about how he thought he could get some run as well. So I'm glad to hear that there's a lot of people, including yourself, that are high on Watson, believe that he can kind of get that role, and he definitely was deserving of that two-way. And I think that he's the guy to kind of watch for that last roster spot, kind of throughout the season, similar to Kada last year.
Yeah, that's tends to be Brad Stevens' MO with that final roster spot. If you look even a few years back when they picked up Hauser as a rookie, he was an undrafted rookie. He came in, had a really strong showing in Maine, got some opportunities with the main roster, made his presence felt, and then by February, the Celtics were like, "Yo, here's a multi-year deal." Right? We're gonna. Well, I think no, they signed him to the end of the season, and then they gave him a multi-year deal.
Mm.
Um, then they've done that with Keita, and it just seems to be their MO. If they've got a guy they like, but they just want to make sure that they want to get a deeper insight into his personality, into his approach, his habits, how he'll gel with the team when he's up with the main roster, how he will fit in terms of that locker room chemistry. You can do that with a two-way guy because if it's not working, you can just cut bait and then you're done, right? There's no like guarantee there. But if you feel like he fits and then he does make an impact on the floor, just fill the 15th roster spot with him. It seems to be Brad Stevens' like preferred way of operating there. So I agree with you. I actually think that Watson is the most logical guy to pick up that 15th spot.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it's just kind of the, like you said, the MO, the precedent that we've kind of seen with this Celtics squad. And there's not really any many options available for the Celtics either. Yeah, in free agency there are some, veteran guys that you could maybe give a bag to or have them come on a veteran minimum contract. But those guys are going to want to get minutes. They're going to want to compete. They're going to want to have an
Exactly.
opportunity to play. And there's not really a lot of opportunity to play with this Celtics squad. With having these 15 guys, you want to have that guy be a younger guy, a guy who can develop, a guy who can kind of learn things while also playing over on in the G League and kind of being there, and then just having that extra body for the end of the playoffs. Also, with the new CBA, it doesn't seem likely that the Celtics are able to get anybody in a buyout by any means either. So it's not like you're holding that last roster spot out for a possible trade to get said veteran on a buyout or anything like that, because it's not going to be able to happen because most people that get bought out make over the non-tax mid-level exception, which the Celtics, being in the second apron, can't sign anybody that gets bought out above that. Um, and we haven't really heard many like trades or anything around really that front over the last couple weeks anyway. So I don't really think there's anything materializing over there. So it just makes sense that with that last roster spot, you kind of just hold out, kind of wait for the season to start, kind of develop, see, because we don't need anything added. We brought everybody back. We have everything already. And then we can kind of just run with it there, kind of see how everything goes. And if it hits, it hits. If Watson
Exactly.
can blossom, if he can look like a star-studded piece in the G League as well, that's even better. Maybe he gets a bigger opportunity quicker. Maybe gets to get that NBA opportunity a little bit faster. Because with Walsh, we did see him look solid over in that main Celtics squad last year, but there was just really no opportunity for him to get a breakthrough with this Celtics team last year.
Yeah, and then I just feel like Watson slots straight in front of him, unfortunately. But that's the nature of the NBA, right? Like
Yeah.
somebody slots in front of you, it's your job to prove that you deserve that opportunity more. And
Hmm.
you have to make the most of the minimal opportunities you get and try and prove that in the smallest windows possible. It's ridiculous how small some of these guys' windows for earning minutes actually is. But when you look at it from the grand scheme of things, Horford's like on what arguably his last year, maybe. I feel like it's most logically his last season now. Maybe you get one more. Watson kind of gives you a lot of what Horford does. Walsh doesn't. And Horford plays a lot of four when they go double big anyway. So you want to try and see what Watson can do at the four. So if that was me, I'd be like, well, let me check out Watson this year because we've still got this year plus two or three more of Walsh. We can worry about that. He's going to get better playing in Maine anyway. So let me look at somebody that we might need to secure long term and see if he's going to fit. And if he doesn't, he can stay on a two-way. He can leave. We can reevaluate next year. So that to me makes perfect sense. I think that when you look at the whole roster, as you mentioned, trades as well, like the Celtics as a second apron team, they can only make one in, one out trades. You can't aggregate salaries. So when you look at this roster at the moment, anybody that's going to come in and make a difference, you need to send a difference maker out to make it work. So these draft guys where you're picking a guy up late in the second, throwing him onto a two-way and then testing the waters, that's going to be part and parcel of the way the Celtics fill out the back end of this roster for as long as they're a contending team. So it's just really interesting to watch it unfold.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting as well because with the new CBA, we're seeing all these new ways that these teams are attacking things. And I think kind of the mold that the Celtics have kind of made with this squad might be the mold that we see for the future. You know what I mean? Some young
Yeah.
stars playing with some teams, and then you got to go out and find those roles players. That Kristaps Porziņģis. The Celtics hadn't had a difference-making big since they traded for Kevin Garnett. There has been no big man that has come into this roster that has made that much of an impact besides Kristaps Porzingis. Fans were hyped when we got Tristan Thompson a couple years ago because we finally got somebody that could do something, or they thought that could do something. You know what I mean? But now we got that. You add Jrue Holiday, who's obviously a fantastic defender, who's basically a better, more efficient Marcus Smart on the offensive side as well. You're just adding on to those things, and I truly think that this is going to be the mold kind of way that we see. And you mentioned Watson kind of growing and being that guy. I think Horford's really that only question mark we have left. You know what I mean? Is he going to be here for just this last season? I kind of agree with you. I think this is his last year. But I think next year there might be a possibility that he comes back for one more, but you got 1 or 2 more years with Al Horford. So I think the goal kind of now for the Boston Celtics is they found Al Horford to be a success in their system. They found a player like him to be able that is a spacer out at the three-pointer, a solid rim protector, a great veteran role leader. They want to have that type of guy ingrained in their system. So finding a guy, regardless if it's Tillman, Walsh, Watson, whoever they feel comfortable is that young guy that can be that next Al Horford, I think is one of their missions.
Yeah, and I feel like Tillman's got the inside track but Watson is my outside bet. I just don't have Walsh fighting for that Horford replacement role.
Hmm.
I still have him fighting for a role, but just not that's very specific. You're our new Al Horford
Yep.
because that's not his style of play at all. I do like Tillman. I do like Watson. I kind of have Watson a little bit more like closer to the heart just because he's a bit younger. You can develop him as part of the system more. He also can hit the free ball straight away, whereas Tillman needs to work on that. There's pros and cons on both sides, right? But it's going to be interesting for sure.
Exactly. And even just having multiple guys that can kind of do that role is even better too. Just in case one of them's
Exactly.
having an off night, you throw the other one in and the other one can do solid as well. I agree with you though. I think Walsh might not be that Al Horford role. He seems like a guy that kind of will do it all. Kind of that's my kind of anticipation from it. Like you said, he's a guy that will die for loose balls. He'll stretch out, hit the three. He'll play some solid defense. I think that his role is going to be the workhorse, the do it all type of guy, the guy that is going to help out and plugging and playing to make sure that those guys like Tatum and Brown do form to their roles and get the stats that they do need. But ultimately, I think it's going to take a year or two to develop that and get to that status. Because I think this year he's going to be fighting for it, but if he doesn't get it, he'll be for a majority of the season running with Maine as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly where I'm at with it, man.
Hmm. All right, Adam. Just before we head out, I just wanted to say, is there anything that we talked about today that you would want to talk about? Anything else you want to mention about the Celtics kind of breakdown here? Any topics that we didn't cover?
Now, we hit on everything that's pertinent, man. I will say the only thing we need to say is Banner 19 will happen a lot quicker than Banner 18 did. I
Yes,
feel
yes,
very confident there.
I'm 1,000% in agreeing on that. Banner 19, I don't see taking another 10, 11 year drought or almost 15-year drought at this point. It definitely would be, at least a 3 to 5 year max, but I think it's happening this year. I don't think it's happening again. I see the repeats happening.
Yeah, I've got a very. I mean, we're biased, right? We're meant to
Yeah.
say the repeat's happening, but I'm with you, dude. It's happening.
There's no holes. There's no holes with this team. Regardless if Porzingis is out, we still got him. But I want to say thank you to Adam and a shout out to Adam over here for joining us today on Celtics Digest. We've been in the talks for this for the last couple of weeks trying to get this done, and I really do appreciate him taking the time out of his day to be here. If you guys don't follow Adam already, you could follow him on Twitter at Adam Taylor at Adam Taylor NBA. Also, check out his show, the Vitamin C's podcast with Tim Sheelis over on YouTube. You can also check him out on Twitter. You can also check out his newsletter as well at the Celtics Chronicle. Just hit 1,000 subscribers over there, and we want to give him his love. So shout out to Adam. Thank you for coming on. Hopefully to have you on another time as well.
Man, I've just tipped my cap to you because you've been crushing it out here, man. Thank you very much for bringing me on, dude. I
Thank,
appreciate it.
thank you so much, Adam. And to everyone that tuned in today, we appreciate your support, appreciate everything. If you guys do enjoy the content, want to make sure you stay up to date on everything revolving around this Celtics team, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. The streams are coming back. The videos will be out. We'll be here for you guys. But as signing off from Bruce Velez and Adam Taylor, we'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a great rest of your day.